by yourself on a first on a teletype and then on a personal computer. But the growth, to ride the growth of this industry for 20 years was, the first 20 years was pretty phenomenal. Then we'll tell you more in a minute about the details of getting started in Ultima Online. But obviously this 40 some odd year journey has been very good to me, shall we say. Not only has it allowed me to build a long career in the video gaming industry, but it let me go search out another little thing you see up there in the screenshot in the upper right. Computer games actually funded my other passion, which is commercial spaceflight. So I took my earnings down through the 45 years or so of making video games into building space companies. And so I actually took myself to space in 2008. So I'm the 483rd person to leave the Earth. And today there's about 536 people who have left the Earth. So, and so for that, in many ways, I thank you.
And so, a little bit about me. I actually don't have a degree in games. Oh, and thank you, AutoCorrect, for saying that I founded a company with the Marriotts, not the Marriotts. I left that in there just because I thought it would be funny. But anyway, so I don't have a degree in computer games. I actually got a degree in technical theater and moved to Austin in 92 and was, surprise, surprise, not making a living in theater. I know it's shocking. And saw an ad in the paper that said video game testers wanted. It didn't say the company, it just said game testers wanted. And I showed up and it was Origin Systems, and I tried to play it cool, like, oh, no big deal, it's just Richard Garriott and Ultima, like, oh, trying not to like be like, oh my god! I think I played it cool. I didn't let on that it was like the most awesome thing ever. So I started out in testing, and my plan was actually to go back and get a graduate degree, but about 2 weeks in, I called my parents and I was like, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. The good news is I got a job and making some money. Bad news is I'm not going to go back and get a graduate degree, and my parents were like, oh no, that's good news. Like, we don't have to pay for we don't have to pay for you to go to graduate school. Yay! And I'm like, look, I'm going to run this company in a few years, so it's all going to be great. So I quickly became a lead QA tester, and then convinced them to, I badgered this guy until he let me move over into development, and I started out as an associate producer on Ultima 9, and then we pitched UO together, which we'll get into in a second, and then later we left and we founded Destination Games together with Marriott's. Same guys who made a hotel chain, it's so weird. And we shipped a game called Takarasa way too early, but then awesome. And then I went to Disney for a little while, and now we're working on a game called Shroud. But going back to post-mortem of Ultima Online, these guys founded the company.
Yeah, well, you know, what's interesting, if you go back to those earliest days when I was making games, the state-of-the-art packaging was a Ziploc bag. The first company I worked for was a company called California Pacific. Sadly, the founder of that company was, as so many people were in the early days of the computer game industry, he was a cocaine addict. And so he snorted all the money that we made him with all the games we provided him. And so when he went out of business, I called up my older brother Robert, who was, well, I'm also a college dropout. He was this overeducated engineer and business guy, and said, hey, can you help me, squeeze money out of this jerk that quit paying me? And he was unsuccessful. So I went to my second company, which was Sierra Online. And the reason I ended up with Sierra was because they would agree to my incredibly outrageous demands of, instead of using a Ziploc bag, using a box. And so Ultima 2 was actually the first game in a box in the gaming industry. And it had another, this one was an outrageous request. The other outrageous request was a cloth map. And so that's where cloth maps got started too. But interestingly, Sierra also had some problems with drugs and alcohol, so they also quit paying me. And so I called my brother and I said, hey Robert, can you help me try to collect from these deadbeats? Which he tried and we failed. And so I was getting ready to go to yet another publisher, and my brother came to me and said, stop. He said, I'm a business guy, I'm an engineer. that I at least know that when money comes in the front door to pay the person who makes the product, or you have no company, so why don't you and me go into business together? We'll at the very least, you'll be paying. I said, well, that's a better deal than I've ever had before. And so that's what started Origin. And when we started Origin, it was the first and only gaming company in the southern part of the United States. I mean, there were a number of companies that started in California. There were a couple here on the East Coast. It was actually in 1982. It was the same year as Electronic Arts was formed. But being the only company in that region meant that suddenly anybody in the South who wanted to be part of the video gaming industry flocked to Origin. So it was a real golden era when people like Chris Roberts with the Wing Commander product line, and of course, mine with Ultima, and Paul Neurath, who eventually did Ultima Underworld, and Warren Spector, who helped us in the middle Ultimas, and now does a lot of his own things too. A lot of the people who eventually made Doom and Quake, those guys got their start at Origin also. In fact, and even today, if you go down to Austin, Texas, there's 30 or 40 large to small game developers down there. The vast majority of them, have a significant tie back to Origin from that kind of golden era. But what's interesting about this earliest era was also sort of how it was the best of times and the worst of times in the way that game developers treated ourselves, or how we had the ambiance at a game development studio. And so on the one hand, everyone was young, everyone was having a great time, everyone was super devoted to getting the game out, which meant that people straggled into the office at noon or worse, but then stayed at the office till 2 to 4 a.m. and often slept right there at the office. And the cycle repeated, and you were always, still always, very late and very over budget, and so felt the pressure to crunch endlessly. And so this journey that for some years started this rah, we're all in this together, after 10 years of permanent crunch, sort of became this, and especially as people got married and had children and other life responsibilities, sort of became much more difficult to sustain. But I still have, if I think of the game industry, there's still a lot of memories of that period that I will cherish, as well as some memories where I'm like, yeah, it's a good thing we moved beyond those cool practices.
So where Ultima Online started was 1995, and so just to kind of frame the period of 1995, so we have online games. We've got Air Warrior, we've got Neverwinter Nights, we've got The Realm, we've got Mud's Zoo. So there's definitely some pre-existing online gaming going on. The 28.8 modem had just been launched, but most people were using a 14.4 modem. The state-of-the-art CPU was a 133 megahertz, 16 megabytes of RAM was the most RAM you could have in a computer, and most people actually didn't have an operating system that could access all of that RAM yet. Okay, remember, 16 megabytes, not 16 gigs, 16 megabytes.
That was a lot compared to the 16K. That was sort of video cards were just being introduced. So you had a 1 megabyte 16-bit video card. And you had hard drives, so 260 megabit hard drive. So this is, so this is all state of the art. What all of this meant was you weren't downloading games. You still had to have physical media to play a game. So there were a lot of constraints. Also, what it meant were people, for the most part, at this point, were playing for games by the minute or by the hour. The idea that you would pay like a monthly subscription, or that you wouldn't pay at all, that literally did not exist. And except for services like America Online, most people didn't even have accounts, and most companies like, say, Electronic Arts, didn't even have the concept of an account. Or, by the way, the World Wide Web was just now launching in 1995. So the idea that a company would have a website was just now occurring. So that's the kind of world that we were in at this point. And so
So I got asked this last night, and I didn't want to, and I kept asking, well, do you really want me to spoil this? Like, how did we get started with Ultima Online? What was the inspiration? And it really was a rocket to the face. And everyone was like, wait, well, rocket to the face. Well, Doom had just come out. And I was still in QA at the time, and at lunchtime, we would play Doom while we were eating our lunch, because we would always eat our lunch at our desk, because we always had so many bugs to test and process, so we would never leave for lunch. And we would play Doom.
You would just never leave.
Yeah, we would never leave. And we would buy lunch, dinner at our desks, and breakfast at our desks. And anyway, so we played Doom, and we were doing one of our death matches, and I rounded a corner, and somebody had beat me to the rocket launcher, and I was running as fast as I could to the rocket launcher, and they had got there first, and they were camping it, and I ran around the corner, and bam, I got the rocket to the face. And at that moment, I was just like, oh my God, people are way more fun than AI. Like, and then I sort of had this flashback to playing Dungeons and Dragons, back in middle school in the library, and I was like, oh my God, like, Ultima was built for Richard modeling him playing Dungeons and Dragons with his friends. The companions were his friends. Literally, Ultima was his D&D party of friends. And so, let's make Ultima, and that's what we literally called it. And this actually idea, like when I brought it to Richard was like, oh yeah, we talked about that before.
Yeah, well, in fact, let me talk about that,
Yeah.
which is, since, as Star correctly stated, Ultima really was intended to be a social experience. And, it was frustrating that you were just one person in front of a computer for many, many, many years. And so down through the years, we were always looking at the work that was being done with Genie and Kesmai and all the other people doing multiplayer MUDs or even some simple graphic games. But because of paying by the minute or paying by the hour and slow modems and modest penetration, it was every time we did the calculus of could we do a game like Ultima, a game at the scale of an Ultima, and support it, the answer was always no. Because the largest community that had ever been formed, the largest number of players, wherever any one of those was 5, 10, 15,000 players total. And so, compared to the cost of building an Ultima, that just made no sense. Up until, again, this same moment, when the World Wide Web was coming into existence. And so when Star came into my office, having been hit in the face with a rocket, and said, boy, we really got to do this, we sat down and thought about it, and we thought, actually right now is the time, because now as the emergence of this World Wide Web, the modem speeds are faster, we could tell that by the time it would take us a year or 2 or 3 to make another game, that the market would be perfect for this thing that we want to do, and we decided now was the time.
Yeah, so we knew it was the time. And the problem was, we didn't have the budget at Origin at that point to make it, so we had to go to our bosses because we had been acquired by Electronic Arts. So we knew we were at the right time, but we had to convince Electronic Arts. And so that's where we are at the pitch, and the pitch, and the pitch. So we came up with what we thought was an awesome pitch. Like, coming up, we showed all the market, this whole market situation, the World Wide Web is happening. People aren't now going to be confined to services like America Online. People are going to be able to just go directly to the internet themselves. That modem speeds are getting faster, computers are getting faster. We have this beloved franchise of Ultima. Like, it'll be the first time we have this big of a franchise going to the internet with a multiplayer experience. And
it was a great pitch.
Yeah, it was a great pitch.
But you have to understand how this isn't just EA, all big companies, have to, operate in their own self-interest and find a way to objectively make decisions about what things they fund to do next. And so, we put this big pitch together. It included not only the VC said, but a staffing plan and a budget. And you hand that over to the sales department, who then looks at the product, compares it to other existing products, which is the important step, to then do forecasts for how many they think they could sell. Well, since the largest sales of any online game in history was maybe 15,000 units, they said, we believe you guys maybe do twice as big as anything else in history, so we forecast that at 30,000 units, And when you do that math, you come back and go, this is a terrible idea. And so they came back, and the first time we pitched it, we went through this all through all the hoops. We made the pitch, and they said, thank you, but you're out. And so we head in hands, we sulked out of the room, and the next pitch meeting's not for 6 months. And so 6 months goes by, the World Wide Web is beginning to grow. It's even more and more obvious to us. We think surely they're going to think it's more obvious. So 6 months later, we come and basically make the same pitch again, but with updated data about the growth of the internet and how we really need to be doing this now. Second time we're in the room, they hear the pitch and say, 30,000 units. The answer is no. So 6 months later, so now it's a year later. So now it's profoundly obvious the internet is going to be the changing the world. We come back here a third time, make the same third pitch, have the same 30,000 projection, and we're told no. But then we do something unexpected, which is we say, we don't accept that answer. We literally did the very childish stomp your feet, hold your breath. We are not leaving this room until you at least, Origin's budget was already $5 or $10 million a year. We said we don't need $250,000, a rounding error in the errors that will happen in the budget. This is below that error to let us go do the prototype and prove to you that this would work. And after we were told no, they literally tried to just get us out of the room. And we had brought in with us a piece of paper that says, we give Richard Gary the rights to go over budget by $250,000. Eventually, Larry Probst signed it and said, get out of here, you jerks, And so we finally left the room with our $250,000.
It was actually only $150,000.
Okay, $150,000.
Yeah. So they wouldn't even give us like $250,000. They only gave us $150,000. So basically, that was enough for me to go out and get a programmer and an artist, and so to do a prototype. And so what the next step was for us to figure out, okay, well, first of all, no one at Origin, at this point, other than Richard and one other tech lead, believed in this still. And they all had their, and understandably, they were working on, their big projects like Wing Commander and Crusader and Ultima 9, and they had their teams and their resources, which they weren't going to let me have, because those were single-player games, and those were all doing well and had great forecasts. And so I sort of had to find what I could, and also none of those resources had experience doing multiplayer, so I kind of had to go out and figure out where I'm going to find people who have experience doing multiplayer stuff that I can afford to pay. And so I was like, oh, people who've done MUDs. So I found this programmer, this guy, Rick Delschmidt, who had worked on a MUD called Legends MUD, and brought him in, and I said, hey, can we build a prototype in 3 months using one of the in-house game engines we had. So we took Ultima 6, because it had a nice, tiled system that we could quickly get up and running. So in like 3 months, we built a prototype. We're using Ultima 6 that we got the whole company, and basically the only thing that you could do in it is you had a little character that you could run around. You could pick up objects if you just ran over them, and then if you bumped into another person, the object would fall on the ground, and then you could pick it up. And there was no chat, there was no communication, but we had our phone system in the company. You could get on big, giant, like you could basically dial in every one, conference call, basically the whole company, So we basically got the company on a big conference call, basically to do a big test of the system, and it was basically a big scavenger hunt. We hid a bunch of objects in the game and said, everybody go find the objects, and the last person with an object in their inventory gets like a gift card, and everyone's like, oh, okay, well, whatever, do we have to do this? And we're like, yes, please, we really need to test this. And Rick, the whole time, is telling me, I'm not ready. I'm like, no, we have to do, if we're ever gonna, because this whole thing was, because this $150,000 was, if we can build this prototype and then we can show that this works, then I can get like a real budget, which was going to be about $850,000 to build the actual project and hire a full team. And so the day of the test comes, we get most of the company on. I can hear people on the conference call. Everyone has like a blast. Everyone's like, oh my God, this is so much fun. Like, oh, I got the thing. I got the, oh, somebody ran into me and they picked up. Oh, I go catch them. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, this is cool. This is neat. Like, now I get it. And meanwhile, Rick's screaming at me like, stop it, the server's gonna crash, the server's gonna crash. And so I'm like, okay, test is over, you know, like, right, and like, literally right as I'm saying, okay, everybody, we're gonna shut down the server, you know, I'm like, we're shutting it down. so I shut it down right as the server went quit. But anyway, at that point, you know, that was sort of our proof of concept. Everyone sort of got it and was like, oh my God, this is going to be cool. But still, no one wanted to give up their best people. So I kind of got my team at this point was, ended up being, again, more people. Rick was like, well, there's more people who worked with me on Legends Bud. So that's where I got Ralph Koster, who became our lead designer. He was the lead designer on Legends Bud. Who he, you know, of course, he went on to do Star Wars Galaxies and other things like that. He was amazing, and other folks from that. But then I also got people from other teams, like including people who were like on action plans, you know, who would have might have otherwise been exited from the company. I inherited those people, you know.
But it wasn't just the people. It was also funny to point out that, like, so this. No joke, this was literally the bastard stepchild project of Origin and EA. If any senior management could have killed this project, they would have. Not only from the day that we finally got it started, but all through the majority of its development. You know, any great resource came to the company, if some other team wanted them, they got them. And only if no one else wanted them, could Duo hire them. And so he had to be very strategic, go like, if it's an online gaming developer person, then the other people won't want them. So he had to be very careful to tailor his request to make sure he stole the resource. But it went down to offices. So we owned a very nice building here in Austin, Texas at this time, but it was a building that was in need of renovation. And so all the serious and loved projects got the already renovated offices. UO, and by the way, this is going to sound like a joke, but I'm dead serious. UO, for a good period of time, the desks of the employees were literally in a hallway, while all the offices around them, including both walls of the hallway, were demolished and rebuilt. And there were clear sheets of plastic to separate them from hopefully all of the dust that was happening exactly on the other side of this thin piece of plastic. So imagine the sounds of saws and hammers and demolition and construction and paint fumes and the dust that came in under the cracks. And the temperature control, because it was also going through winter.
Yeah, well, so that sign that said Ultima, we kept that sign, and that sign was very important because when they were doing this renovation, they actually at one point removed the exterior walls of the building, which meant that arrow was very important because when you exited the elevators, you needed to go to the right. Because if you went to the left, you would plunge 5 stories to your left. And there was about a month where we got really, really cold. And we couldn't figure out why. We were all wearing like gloves and our jackets, and we were like, and they were like, well, the heaters, even with the plastic, the heaters should be heating you guys up. We don't know what's happening, da da da. And finally, we figured out the server that we were running all our tests was actually sitting underneath the thermostat. And so venting all of this heat. And so the thermostat was like, oh no, it's pretty hot in here. I'm going to turn it on. And it took us a month to figure that out. So we're freezing in a literally, when I say open floor plan, you know, it was literally open to the elements, like, you know, like, don't go to the left, you'll die. You know, so you need to go to the right. And so, we were, but what was interesting is, you know, we were treated so badly that it made us like want to prove. It actually like sort of was this esprit de corps, like we were going to prove something. Like we were like the youngest team. Well, it was both the youngest and the oldest team. You know, we had this like one of our artists was this guy Michael Priest, who was like one of the first artists that ever worked at Origin Systems, and he was this he was awesome. He was one of this first wave of artists that got hired at Origin Systems, who was part of these rock and roll poster artists that had done a bunch of like famous rock and roll posters for this famous music club in Austin called the Armadillo World Headquarters. And so he had done like poster art for like Frank Zappa and like the Grateful Dead, and so you know.
And what's important about these guys too, by the way, we had when Origin started, that sort of heyday again when we were the first company down there. There were no such thing as a computer artist. You know, previously to us hiring these people, I made the art, and I made the art. I'm not an artist, but also there were no paint tools even. I made the art by drawing art on graph paper, converting that graph paper into binary, and converting that into hexadecimal, typing that directly into the computer. Then writing code to copy that hexadecimal into the screen area of RAM. And if the random green dot pattern that was supposed to be grass didn't look like grass, I'd have to sit back and go like, well, which step did I screw up? And so when we hired people like Michael Priest, that was the first time we actually had art tools. I mean, it was the beginning of the mouse to be able to draw with. Prior to that, you literally had to plot a pixel at a time in some other horrible manual way. And so when you needed to go figure out who could be a computer artist, we stumbled into these pen and ink illustrators, the people who would do comic books or rock and roll poster art, and they happened to have the skills that we could quickly train over to be computer artists. So these were old hippie guys, I mean, literally old hippie guys that became the first round of really great computer artists.
And so that picture is the original Ultima Online team right there. That was from our internal newsletter, Origin newsletter that we have every week. And so that was the first team that we hired right after we did that prototype. That's when I first, that might even be the open hallway that we worked in. And so we started working on the game, in our open hallway, and we had the first public-facing website for electronic arts in Origin, and it was full of llamas. Because that first programmer I told you about, Rick Belschmidt, loved llamas. He was obsessed with llamas. That's why, like, the energy vortex, is a llama. Trivia, a little bit of trivia, and that goes back to the fact that Rick Belschmidt is obsessed with llamas. So our first website, like the first...
Not just ours, EA's first website.
Yeah, EA's first website had a lot of llamas on it. So, llama. But there was information about Ultima Online, and when we didn't make any kind of announcement, but people sort of ended up discovering it, and like, oh my God, what's happening? Like, they're going to make an online version of Ultima, and we started getting interest for that. That's where we launched the alpha from,
Well, I want to jump in and just talk about this interesting moment. So, if you remember, we had a finite budget, and right as somebody get so you go on and let me jump.
Okay. So now we're into the real development. So and we had a lot of big plans about how we wanted the game to work, and one of those things, sort of the most infamous one, was resources. So what we wanted the world to have was a fully functioning resource and ecosystem that sort of sustained itself. So this was the idea that the grass was regenerated grass, that the herbivores would eat, and then the predators would eat the herbivores, and if there weren't enough herbivores, the predators would then go to town and start eating the villagers, which would then generate quests. They would go on and then the dragon, if the dragon didn't have enough, animals to eat, the dragon would go to town and attack town. And it was supposed to be this cool cycle of things like that. Well, sounds like an awesome idea, and it worked great when there were no players around. It would work. It was awesome. Like you could watch.
Cool to watch.
You could watch the whole ecosystem function, like the little animals, the rabbits and stuff would eat the grass, and the wolves would eat the rabbits, and sometimes would get slightly out of balance, and but it then would sort of fluctuate and right itself, and and it worked great. But as soon as you introduced the players would just wipe out everything faster than anything could respawn itself. And so it was this great idealism meets reality, where it's like it will never ever function in the face of, and it was also sort of this sobering moment of like, oh, it's just kind of like the real world, and so we actually had to do away with the whole resource system and the whole ecosystem.
Which, by the way, we spent person years developing.
Yeah.
And so it was literally just a complete waste of time. It was eventually pulled out after we realized we couldn't balance it.
Another interesting tidbit is shards. So if you've ever watched the intro to the game, there's this whole backstory about why they're shards, right? And the original idea when we had projections of 30,000 units was that everybody was going to play on a single server because there weren't going to be that many people playing, right? And we could, we were just going to have a couple thousand people simultaneously.
30,000 people lifetime, their projection.
Right.
And it would imply 3,000 people peak concurrency, which you probably handle in one box.
Right. And then, when we got people signing up for the alpha and the beta, we realized, oh my God, we're going to need multiple servers, and we're going to, but we want a fictional explanation for that. And so then we reached back to Ultima 1 and the Gem of Immortality and Mundane, and then the Shards reality, and then that established this whole fiction between we're British and Blackthorn, and how I want to keep all the shards separate because everybody's reality is just as valuable, and where British wants to fix the universe that got shattered.
Reunify it. Which, by the way, this never survived in a thing of the live game, but we were as excited as we were that we were beginning to believe that we were going to have enough success to demand shards. Fictionally, I at least was profoundly sad because that also meant that people would start on one server or another, and their lives really would be separated. And so, having that fiction to me sort of bound everybody's meta reality together. And we even thought that someday maybe we would merge the shards again. And we even for a while had dropped shard fragments into the game, and there was a little collecting game to collect pieces of the shards to, hypothetically reunify that gem and ultimately reunify the shards. But in the end that just became too complicated, and we thought it would be something to deal with, 20 or 30 years from now.
Yeah, and what's funny too about that term shards is it's now a term used in database programming when they refer to having separate instances of a data set. They call them shards. And when you confront a database programmer with that, and you're like, you know where that came from, right? Then that was like from
Mondane's Gem of Immortality.
Yeah, and they're like, what the hell are you talking about? They're like, no, let me show you this intro video from this game 20 years ago. And I'm like, what?
Literally on the airplane here, I was sitting next to a guy that does military encryption, and he used the word shards. Just we were chatting on the phone and on the plane, and I'm just going like, how far into the rabbit hole can I take them to try to explain?
Yeah, and so it's so weird that this fictional explanation of having separate servers for an MMO is now this industry-wide, not like a gaming industry. I mean, yes, it's used in the gaming industry, but now it's used like a technical programming term across the whole planet because we wanted to fictionally explain why people were going to play on separate servers. Awesome. And so, but this led to this whole spate of invention that, again, I have not seen since. So 20 years ago, we were just scrambling to figure out, okay, how are we going to do all of this? So we built so first of all, the idea of professional co-hosting facilities did not exist yet. So the idea that you were going to go, having third-party co-hosting facilities, that didn't exist. Amazon Web Services, things like that, and literally physical co-hosting, that just did not work yet. If you were going to do that, you did that yourself. And in fact, people were just now figuring out that they were going to do that themselves. And so we literally did things like oh, there's an empty office. We're going to go build the hosting facility for one of these servers that's in that office.
In that sense.
So for a while there, I can't remember which of the servers, but one of the central servers for the U.S. For a while was literally in Origin Systems, in an empty office. The whole idea of accounts, so Electronic Arts did not have the concept of a user account until we invented it for Ultima. So the whole idea that you had a username and password, we had to invent that for Ultima. The idea of a unique alphanumeric code that had monetary value, we had to invent that for Ultima Online. And it's actually, we think, one of the very first occurrences of that effort. What's funny too is to ensure its complete randomness, the algorithm for it required random physical input. So I have this distinct memory of walking by the server room, which is where you had to be to enter that random seed, and seeing Michael Chapter, one of the programmers, with a mouse doing this. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm generating the codes. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. So I figured this whole thing out, like, to make them truly random, you require a physical input. And I'm like, oh,
because otherwise somebody might calculate it and figure out future codes.
Right, so, because otherwise someone could hack it and reverse engineer, and like, I'm like, oh, it's brilliant. But if you're doing this. Building. We're now at the point where we're ready to beta test. And why we didn't think of this before, but we come to two realizations. One, when we were in the alpha, the game was small. It was like a single map, and so the data set was small enough, even on a 14 port 28 modem. If you waited 2 days, you could download it.
And had no crashes.
Yeah, so you could download it over a 2-day period.
And didn't make any phone calls.
Right.
So
But for the beta, there was literally no way you were going to be able to download it. It's just not possible. There's absolutely no way. So we had to send you physical media to do beta testing. Like, oh, right, okay. And surely we had allocated budget for that. Nope. We have no budget to send anyone CDs, so we cannot do a beta test. Okay, well, maybe let's just charge for the beta. We're like, oh, we're screwed. No one's going to pay.
An idiot is going to pay $5.
Yeah, no one will pay us to play the beta. So we're like, well, we have no other choice. So we put up the sign up, and 50,000 people signed up to the beta test in like 2 days. Like, it was insane.
And by the way, what's really important about this moment is literally before this day, this, as we've been describing, this is the bastard stepchild product that no one believed in. They thought that 30,000 units lifetime sales was giving a gift of a higher than likely projection to this product. And when in 2 days, 50,000 people signed up to pay $5 just to test the beta version, suddenly they got it.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, we became the most important thing in Electronic Arts.
Did you get walls?
Yeah, we had walls. And then all of a sudden, everyone wanted to help us at the very end. Which meant...
And of course, to get a piece of the credit.
Yeah, so a bunch of execs from Electronic Arts came to Austin to help. They suspended all development on Ultima 9 and gave me that entire team, which that team was so excited about. They were really motivated to help us.
Well, and what's interesting about that, about the psychology of that moment too, is literally when we stomped our feet and held our breath and said we're going to make you whether you like it or not, they were furious and they said, we really don't want you making Ultima Online. We do want you making Ultima 9. And so, prior to the switchover, we were kind of fighting to keep the movement in the direction EA didn't want it. And then suddenly this flipped, not only pro-UO, but then EA literally had no interest in Ultima 9 from that day ever forward. They were done with solo player games, really, or solo player Ultimas anyway at that moment. And so, frankly, everybody was pissed. I mean, and all this help, not only was, we felt, a problem at the team level, at a personal level, but frankly, was the help was, added layers of slowness and new voices into the mix, at a very difficult time.
Yeah. So there was, again, we're sort of at the end, trying to finish, and we get an entire. I basically get my team size doubles, and it's a lot of way more senior staff than most of my team, right? And so they're very experienced, and again, it would have been super helpful at the beginning. And so they come in and they look at a lot of the code, which, granted, a lot of it is super hacked together, spit and string and duct tape, but it works. And then they're like, oh no, we're going to rewrite this. We're just going to rewrite this part. And they do. They start rewriting big chunks of it, and we're like, oh no, you can't. Oh god, and then the whole thing falls apart. We're like, okay. And so there was this whole period of big chunks getting rewritten and then having to be rewritten back to the old way, and then that just sort of happening again right at the end. So a big lesson learned there was don't just reassign an entire team to another project at the very end. No, does not work. Not happy. No one's happy there. That was fun. But we did ship, so we made it. We got out there, and we got to see lots of fun stuff. And during this beta, we saw lots of fun emergent gameplay. And Richard and I cherry-picked some of our favorite stories. My favorite was we flipped the switch to start the beta, and so I'm standing by the docks in Britain, and I'm like, oh, what's the first thing people are going to do? And so a male character logs on and a female character logs on, and they turn towards each other and they say, "Want a cider?" Really? We spent all this time building this elaborate virtual world with dragons and magic and crafting and houses and then they run to a house right off the screen and they and again when you play the game basically you can strip to your underwear and you can type nasty messages to each other and you can rap like this, and that's what they do, and I'm like, okay, and literally within a week this had evolved into a prostitution ring. Because what had happened was, Britain's a really big city, right? So we didn't have time to decorate all the buildings in the town, right? So there were some empty buildings by the docks, and so this guy, Fly Guy, took over a couple of the buildings along the docks, and he would dress up like a pimp. So he would take, the hat with the feather on it, like the Cavalier time hat, and dyed a bright, green or purple, I think. And you would go to him, and then he would line up his girls, and you would pick your lady, and then she would bow in front of you. And again, and so the biggest money-making profession in the game was prostitution, not blacksmithing, not carpentry, prostitution. So in the virtual world, the old expression, the world's oldest profession, got recreated in virtual, and I was just like, wow, that's awesome. And it sort of the sort of the dirty little secret of AOL is what kept them in business was all the cybering going on in the chat rooms, right? And so I was like, oh yeah, well there you go. I should have realized that that's exactly what was going to happen in our game. Then my second favorite one was the bank robbers and magic gates. So we have basically the dollhouse mechanic of like when you run into a building, the roof pops up, right? And so it used to be when you create a gate. When there was no verification when you would leave a safe area, you would just basically running through the gate would instantly teleport you anywhere else. So these really clever dudes basically put a gate right inside the doorway of the bank. So you're like loaded down, like super encumbered, like moving really slow, trying to get to the bank as quickly as you can to get to the banker and put all your stuff in, and you like run into the bank, and they had it perfectly placed so you don't see the gate until it's too late because the roof hasn't quite popped off. The next thing you know, you're standing in a pile of corpses, naked corpses, a bunch of PKs around you going, ah, right before you're dead. And my first reaction was like, assholes, and then my next reaction was like, oh, that's really clever. They were totally using the simulation. That's the system we set up. Like, they didn't break any rules. That's like how, and so, but that moment there was when we kind of realized, like, oh, like, while we're game developers, we're also like a government. We have to think of ourselves of like, as criminals, figure out ways to exploit our system, we have to pass new laws. We have to figure out ways that as they figure out ways to harm our citizenry, we have to, adjust to that. And so we made an adjustment to the gates that if you leave a safe area, there's a confirmation that comes up and says, hey, you're about to leave a safe area and go into an area where you might encounter PvP, right? And so that closed that loophole. But I was like, that was a really clever loophole. That was like, and that was also a debate of like, well, should we do any action against those guys? Like, did they, should we, suspend them or run them? Like, no, like they were totally doing by the rules.
Well, let me tell one that's related to that, just because it relates to this playing by the rules. One of my favorite things to do in these very early days was to hang out in the help queue. It used to be that directly from within the game you could request a GM to come help you out, and all the employees could see that queue. You could leave the window open on your screen and watch it go by. And so since we really didn't have much QA or customer service or anything else, all of us on the team would sit there and go help people. So I would do that too, and I would do it as Lord British, which I always thought was fun for me. And this one thing came through the help queue where this lady was, saying, help, I've just started the game. Somebody keeps killing me, taking my stuff, so I have to start a new character. As soon as I walk into town, they kill me and take all my stuff, and I've done this now 3 times. I'm pissed off, and if this happens again, I quit. I'm not coming back. I said, okay, I'm going to go about this lady. So I jump in, and I see her. She's just rolled up her new character. She's getting ready to go to town, and I say, aha, I'm Lord British. I'm here to help you. And she's like, who are you? Okay, well, I'm here to help. So what's up? She said, okay, well, keep going out of town. I keep doing games. So I said, okay, I'm with you. Don't worry. I'll escort you out of town, and we will be fine. And we take a few steps out of town, and someone has macroed very well the ability to just scream across a screen, kill this woman or steal, like maybe just steal from her, but basically just took all her stuff and disappeared off the other side of the screen, where I only saw like a couple flickers on my screen that this was even happening, and this woman's like, here it goes again. And so I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. But I'll be right back. And so I teleport out in front of this guy, and fortunately he keeps running straight. And so when he comes on my screen, I freeze him to the ground, and I say, I'm Lord British, you evil scoundrel, how dare you do this poor woman. She's trying to play the game, you're being a terrible ruffian, don't you dare do it again, because as Lord British, if you do this again, I ain't going to ban you from this game. And this person goes, oh, Lord British, I'm so sorry, I couldn't help myself, I know it's a bad thing to do, so I promise I won't do it again, so let that be a lesson to you. And gave this woman back her stuff, and while I'm there talking with her, zip, same guy. Steals all her stuff. I say, stay here. I teleport in front of him, zigzag. This time I still manage to freeze him to the ground. I go, dude, what's up? I told you, I'm going to ban you from the game. He goes, oh, I know. It was just so funny. I couldn't resist it. I promise I'll never do it again. I really promise. I said, okay, look, that's 2 strikes. 3rd strike, you're out. I said, okay. So go back to the woman and give her stuff. Guess what happens? Here he comes. Wait. Freeze. What the hell do you think you're doing? That's 3 strikes. I'm going to ban you from this game. He goes, look, Richard Garriott. He said, I'm playing the character of a thief by the rules you put in as a thief into this game. And if you, the king, comes to me and tells me quit your thievery, of course I'm going to say I'm going to quit my thievery. But I'm a thief. And I'm playing by the rules, literally. And I went, shit. And so I teleported into the farthest side of the planet. Went and gave the woman back her stuff. And then we went and started having a chat like, what have we done?
So another awesome one is, one of the big problems we had was lag, right? And so the players organized a protest in Lord British's castle, the naked drunken protest. So as you know, if you drink a lot, you throw up in the game. So what they organized, they had a time. I can't remember what the time was, but they figured out a time where they would all meet, which, again, gathering a large group of people is a really great way to generate a lot of lag. So they knew that would be a self-fulfilling thing. So it's like, let's get as many people as we can in Lord British's castle, and everybody bring a lot of alcohol, so we throw up a lot, and we'll curse, and everyone curse and throw up. And to protest the lag. And again, we were like, well, please don't do that. That's going to generate a lot of lag, which is the whole thing. And they were like, no, that's the point. Like you guys need to pay more attention to the lag, and we're going to do that. And it was, again, one of those moments where we're like, oh yeah, we're just like a government. Like we have protests, and
But it was also just amazing that these people, this protest to us was an interesting sign in that people were so attached to the game already that as opposed to quit the game, they would do these protests in the game. And we began to reflect on how to operate the game versus a real world in the following ways for me. If you think about it, the whole team, even when it was huge, it was maybe 30 people, and the number of people that came to join to play was something like 1 million. And a metaphor to think about that relationship is, let's suppose 30 people decided to go build the city of Austin, which can hold about 1 million people. And that team of 30 people designed and constructed every road, every water pipe, every sewer pipe, every electrical line, every shop, put every item on every shop's shelf, put the price on every item on every shop's shelf, put all the speed limit signs up, pass all the laws about civil engagement, and did all that when not a single person was living in the city, thinking about what it might be nice to have as a city, and then turn the light switch on one day and say, hey, everybody, come on down, and 1 million people move in. What are the odds it works? Pretty close to zero, right? I mean, it literally couldn't be done, right? The electricity probably wouldn't work, the water wouldn't flow, the sewage back up, some stores would be empty, some things would be, people would be upset about pricing, people would probably be upset about tax rates being too high or tax rates being too low. School boards wouldn't work because they didn't exist probably. They would be, and when you think about the real world, there's a lot of granularity between the governor, or let's say the city, in this case, a mayor and city council. Think of ourselves as the mayor and city council. Well, there are things in the real world like school boards and neighborhood associations and all this intermediate leadership that helps both information flow up as well as information flow down. And what was interesting about that is that, when people were complaining about stuff, legitimately, they were all pretty much complaining about the same things, right? I mean, lag is horrible. Yeah, we got it. Big potholes in the road. Yeah, we got it. Almost everybody was screaming about the same, 10 items. But our ability to even tell everybody that, yeah, we see this list of 10 items was close to impossible. I mean, we had no intermediate communication networks. And so our ability for players to get our attention, they couldn't tell we were listening, and we couldn't tell that we were hearing them because of the complete lack of government infrastructure at this moment. That now, community infrastructure is something we all think about very carefully in games, but this was sort of the first moment of that.
All right, 2 more. So before we get to the best one, of course. So there was the Siege of Trinsic. So one of the great things about UO, and one of the terrible things, is that you can put things anywhere, right? And so these lovely people figured out Trinsic, right? So Trinsic basically has 2 gates. Literally, there's only 2 ways in and out of Trinsic. So these carpenters figured out that they could just put some dressers inside the gates of Trinsic, and people could not get in or out of Trinsic. And at this time, this was before you could destroy wooden objects, right? So literally there was nothing you could do, because as soon as you would pick one up, they would just put another one. And so, and they just had an army of carpenters. So they were not. These were craftspeople, right? So it was a siege by craftspeople, not a siege by warriors. It was a siege by craftspeople, and they trapped an entire city of people for like a week, with furniture. And we sat there, and again it was this whole like, well, like this is terrible. Like this town, these people are trapped. Like, I mean, without, granted, there's people who had mark and recall could get out. But if you didn't have a recall, you literally could not get out of the city, and people could not get into the city. And so we were like, well, first of all, did we do any action against these people? We were like, well, no. Again, they're using the system as we designed it. Like, we can't, I mean, there's no action we can take. That's the simulation we built. That's the beauty of the simulation. Secondly, we can't leave it like this. I mean, we can't let people hold the entire cities hostage. We got to have so can we expand the simulation to prevent these things in the future? So that's when we came up, so it took us about a week to come up with a patch that allows you to destroy those objects. But again, for a week, carpenters held the city hostage with furniture.
By the way, they use that same thing. A lot of the fun and terrible things people did were edge cases. And so, if you attack somebody in town, the guards would come throttle you. But carpenters also figured out that they could use the same process to trap a single individual in a confined space and make sure there was a burning flask of oil in there so that the person would burn to death and couldn't get out. And they wouldn't be caught as having done damage because at that time they could desynchronize those things and exploit an edge case. So.
All right, and so our favorite moment of emergent gameplay, or at least mine, was the so at the end of the beta, we had this great idea of like, let's do a grand tour. Let's go to all the cities.
It was also practical. We didn't want everybody to show up in one place.
Right, we wanted to spread people out, again, because of lag. And so we'll go to each of the towns and we'll give a short speech. And so we started that tour, and a very fun moment was when we showed up in Moonglow and everyone was mooning us. Yeah, so they would pull their pants down and then they would so that was fun. But then we show up at my castle, of course was going to be the part, and we're giving our speech, and all of a sudden a fire field appears on the parapets. And, I'm like, ha ha ha, of course you can't hurt me. But right before that, the servers had crashed. Because, of course, it's the beta, and there's a ton of, everyone knows this Grand Tour, so it was our highest concurrency we had ever had because they knew we were going to have the Grand Tour. So, of course, the servers crashed. And so right before we had showed up at my castle, the servers crashed, they came back up, everything's fine, and, and of course, there's a few steps you have to take when the servers come back up. We'll get into that in a second. So, a fire field appears. I step into the fire field and I'm like, haha, you know, how dare you try, you can't affect me, your pitiful fire field, because, you know, I'm invulnerable. Because I remember to set my flag when the server came back.
Someone else didn't.
Richard, so that's the picture of me saying, ha ha ha, you know, your fire field can't do any harm to me. Richard sees me do that.
And what's funny is when the fire field came up there, I was virgin standing in it, and your first reaction when things get on fire is you step out of it. So my first reaction, I actually stepped out of it first, and I thought, oh, yeah, I'm invulnerable. Walked back into it, boom. And it's important to know what's happening in the office at this moment. Because don't forget, when you die, you were a ghost. And when you're a ghost, you cannot chat. And so here I am dead, and everyone in our office is also playing, right? But we're all playing in our own office. So we're separated somewhere in the origin building. And a few of us are patched in with voice chat, but most of us are not. And so suddenly I'm dead, and I can't talk to anybody. So I can't go like, hey, can somebody help me? Please, somebody go directly. And the QA people are all going like, shit, what happened? Who did it? What do we do? And
meanwhile, someone runs down the hall saying, Richard is dead. And for a moment, some of us are not sure, like, is Richard really dead? Or is his character dead? I saw his character die, so I knew what was happening. But there were some people who were, like not in this area, they were in some of the other. So they're not sure, like, did someone shoot Richard? Because, by the way, someone had been to his house, and, like, you know,
that's another story.
That's another story. So at this,
that's for tonight when we're drinking.
So I'm the Lord of Chaos. So, you know, my reaction is like, how dare you attack, you know, us at this? And so
And by the way, we are seconds away from the end of the beta. Right.
So I unleash, you know, lots and lots of demons into the crowd. And everyone in the crowd, except the one dude, Reigns, who did this, is innocent.
And we're murdering them all. and what's funny is the people in our office think this is hilarious, right? Because again, we eventually data mined that it was Reigns, but at that time there was no text on screen and no control panel we had where we could determine it was Reigns in real time. And so like, just screw it, kill them all. And as you guys know, once you die, you're not part of this experience anymore. So you have to do the corpse run business. And so all these people were so proud and happy, you know, 60 seconds from the end of reality, to be standing here with us at the final moments. And just before those final moments, they turn into a ghost and have to make a run. And so they're not there when the lights go out. And so we actually think this is hilarious from what we see from our side, but actually a lot of the people there were really pissed off and disappointed because we basically, you know, destroyed their finale from their perspective, even though we had a good time. Had a good time at their expense.
Chaos. All right. So then we go live. And we were probably not ready to go live. But, you know, in the grand tradition of games going live before they're ready, we had a launch vote where, you know, many of us on the team said, hey, why don't we wait a little bit, give it a little more time to bake in the oven.
A little more stability.
A little more stability, maybe a little less lag. You know, again, we were, at this point, remember, we are the most important thing in electronic arts. All of a sudden, the internet is going to be a thing, you know, where, you know, electronic arts before, remember, the internet wasn't going to be a thing, and now the internet's a thing. And so they're like, oh, no, it's time, you guys go. We're like, And so we went, and we become the fastest selling PC game ever in electronic arts history. Again, despite not being quite ready, having some stability issues, we get very mixed reception from the critics. Some magazines give us like best game of the year, whereas like PC Gamer gives us like coaster of the year.
Use your disc as a coaster.
Right, and which I decided decided to take humorously, and I asked for my coaster. Like I wrote the editor, Johnny Wilson, and I said, "Hey, that's okay. Can I get my coaster?" He did not take it very well, because it turns out he doesn't have a sense of humor. So we named a slime in the game after him. There's a slime. I don't know if it's on there, but there was a slime in the game called the J. Wilson slime, and that's named after Johnny Wilson. You know, if you're listening, Johnny, you know, I'm not sorry. Just have a sense of humor next time, and that won't happen. Again, at this time, remember, there aren't really any online games that have operated at this scale, and we have to build a support system and a team. And you know, the idea of having a live team is like a whole new thing for us. Like we're like, oh, like the game doesn't like just go in a box and go on a shelf and then we move on to the next game. We have to have like a live team. Like that was like.
Yeah, well, in fact, I remember the day that we went to my brother Robert, who was the general manager of the company, and we said, hey, you know, we need to hire this person, and this person's job is going to be a community manager. And they're like, okay, well, exactly how does that contribute to the bottom line? And we're going like, well, you know, they talk to the players, and, you know, they're sort of this middle level of government in the sense of communication up and down, and they keep everybody happy and healthy. And they're going like, so what feature does it actually put in the game? And we're going, no, you're missing the point. It's really here to keep this relationship between us and the players working correctly. And they just did not get that. They didn't want it. They thought it was a complete waste of money. They could not imagine why we would be hiring people that they couldn't figure out how to measure their direct impact on the code base. And of course, now no one would ever consider now when you start the game, you hire the community management team, right? You don't wait till it's done. You start at the beginning. But we had to break down all those new barriers.
And of course, there were lots of other challenges, like our skill system, which has evolved quite a bit over the years. But those of you who've been around a long time can remember the very first implementations of the skill system. Being a use-based system, how you gain skills, how decay works. It was pretty rough at the very beginning. You know, the intent was good, but how you allocated your skills and how they decayed didn't quite work very well. You know, things that you didn't intend to lose would all of a sudden go away. You know, the whole idea of being able to decide which ones you want to keep and which ones would go away didn't exist at all at first. Then, of course, player killing. So, you know, the idea at first was the game was basically the Wild West. You know, there was the towns were safe areas, and if literally you walked one step out of the town, you were in the Wild West. I mean, it was like, you know, there was no safety. You know, and even in towns, you know, you could be attacked. Guards would show up, but you could still be attacked even in the town. Still to this day, you know, people's fondest memories are of experiences related to that. However, it was the most customer-limiting part of the game ever. You know, most people who wanted to play the game, that was the one thing that kept them from playing the game. And you know, a lot of people talk about the infamous split between Traluca and Trammel and Feluca, but you know, it's you know, and but the reality is the highest subscription numbers happen after that split. You know, and so the reality is having a truly Wild West, you know, anything goes, player killing can basically happen anywhere, you know, is very limited.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting is this is still an issue we struggle with, and I'm guessing you guys do too. Is how wild to leave it, and because what we have noticed then and noticed to this day is if you ask someone to tell you their favorite story of something that happened within the online environment, the huge plurality, if not majority, of those stories involve people exploiting some of these edge cases to take advantage of somebody else in some way. So kind of bending the rules and being a jerk in some sense of the word, or you know, being the victim or the perpetrator. And so, but we we also literally knew that there was big swaths of people that just literally could not get started. They couldn't join. They couldn't get their career started. And, there was a huge area of frustration. And sure, if you were already an experienced player, this was great for you. But if you weren't, then or you're just a role player that didn't want to engage in it, this could be truly a problem. But how to find that balance is something we still work on to this day, as to how to make sure that it's safe enough to role play and have your weddings and things without having it be the red wedding from and yet how to make sure that people are incentivized to participate in things that take you into those areas of danger, like the quest of courage that Winfield and I volunteered to go on despite our role play non-PvP tendencies.
And then there was duping. So, the game is, seamless, right? But there are scenes. So, the game runs on multiple servers, and people figured out where the parts of the map were, where there was a transition between one part of the map and the other, where literally where the machines supported different parts of the map. And would figure out ways to trade goods between them, or move goods over those scenes, and found all sorts of loopholes to dupe items. And so we were kind of the first game to experience wholesale duping. So finding all of those use cases and fixing them, and that was a constant war. And then there was legal issues. So a big mistake we made was, based on a communication issue. So because we were one of the first games that was going to go out to a much larger audience than ever before, that was going to be an online game. So you've got to remember, back in 1997, the general population had never played an online game before. Did not even understand what that meant. I mean, that's why we called the game Ultima Online. And so on the box, we had to put a lot of information that tried to help them understand, hey, you're going to connect to the internet, you're going to be playing with lots of other people, and the game is going to be available to you all the time, right? That's what we should have said. We should have said all the time, left it pretty vague. But what we instead said was, the game's going to be available to you 24/7. So, what that meant was, sometimes we had to take the servers down to update them. Sometimes the servers crashed. So, this awesome dude decided to sue us for that. So, we had to deal with a big lawsuit about the words 24/7 that we had put on the box. By the way, it was the same dude who did the volunteer ones.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So, that was fun.
Hellbanging.
Yeah. But there was also sorts of, one of the things that we did, being among the first, was we set a ton of trends. So the idea that something that was basically made up of ones and zeros and pixels actually had real dollar value really started with Ultima Online. Before Ultima Online, there was literally no prior examples of any virtual good having any real dollar value. Ultima Online was the very first example of that.
And you can imagine, so eBay also started about this time too. So, but you can imagine our shock and wonder when, within days of Ultima Online going live, we began to see first relatively modest items go up for sale on eBay, things like a powerful sword. And these powerful swords would go for tens and then pretty quickly hundreds of dollars. But far more shocking was when real estate started to show up. And within a month, maybe just a couple weeks, there was a shop right on the doorsteps of Trinsic, a blacksmith shop that somebody sold, and the price listed was $10,000. And that made us really kind of sit back and kind of powwow and go like, how is this possible? But then as soon as you reflect on it, you quickly get it, because people very early on began to gobble up real estate. And if you were going to be a blacksmith, you needed to be where people were coming in and out of the existing NPC towns were the places where there would be a guaranteed flow of people. And if you had the choice of operating in the woods somewhere that nobody would find you, or operating on the doorsteps of Trinsic, that's obviously a better place to operate. And people, because they could sell their virtual swords for $200 or $300 a piece on the internet, that meant that that place really was worth $10,000. I mean, literally they could make a profit in real US dollars by owning that piece of property to be able to sell their virtual goods out of. And then that's also when we began to realize, wow, we have opened yet another can of worms, because virtual gold began to go up, all this gold farming started coming in. Immediately we realized that also there needs to be plenty of money laundering, literally illegal foreign money laundering going on, and so we really weren't sure, what other future moral or legal entanglements we had suddenly unearthed.
Also, UO is really the start of both online community as a popular medium and really third-party community and machinima stuff. So, one of the things that happened about 3 months into live, this player started role-playing this character called the Hulkster. And so he had leveled up his, unarmed, his wrestling skills. And so, and he would go around challenging people to fight him, to wrestle him. And he would dress like Hulk Hogan and talk like Hulk Hogan. And he started issuing challenges to me, to black folk. And he's like, and calling, and saying that I wasn't, man enough to fight him. I was too afraid to show up to fight him, etc. And so I was like, of course I'm not going to do this. And then I was like, oh no, I'm totally going to do this. And we had not one, but we had 3 matches. We had a series of 3 matches, the Hulkster versus Blackthorn. That the servers could barely keep up with it. They were like one of the most popular things. Who would know, like wrestling so it was. And then the other one I like to point out is Bone Dude and Plate Dude, which I think that the whole red versus blue wouldn't exist without, because it's really the first example of someone, 2 guys kind of coming up with this witty banter of playing these characters. They had a whole comic strip. If you haven't ever seen Bone Dude and Plate Dude, you need to go see Bone Dude and Plate Dude. It's hilarious. They're these 2 characters. They're idiots. And they're hilarious. And then it was also the birth of all of the third-party websites that support community. StratX Vault is also the birth. And it's also the birth of all the modern player guilds that we know today, like the Syndicate. And all the guilds that, and most of the player guilds that are still operating today got started in Ultima Online. And it's also the birth of online language that's still used today, and it's used everywhere, like Nerf and PK and Live. All those terms, MMORPG, all of those terms started with Ultima Online. That was the first time any of those terms got used. And the term rares. And in fact, this is, and I'm sorry to say, Graf Coster has this theory, which I actually think is true, that it's Ultima Online's fault that Free to Play exists.
I believe that.
And this is why. It's because of the rares in Ultima Online. So the way the tech works in Ultima Online, there's basically static objects and dynamic objects. The static objects are all the objects that come on the disk, and the dynamic objects are objects that are streamed from the server. And whenever there was a bug, something missing, a static object that was missing, like a base or a piece of water or something, we plug that hole with a dynamic version of what was supposed to be a static version. That's how you would be able to get the water tile that you could fish from out of your backpack, right? And so then that birth, and that's how you get the base that you weren't supposed to take, or and then there were other separate issues like the true black dye, and all that, because you could propagate dyes, right? So all those bugs that led to all the crazy rares in Ultima Online led to this whole virtual economy and real economy based on a real dollar value for these rares, right? So there was these websites that track the rares, like listed all the virtual locations, and whenever there's a server got brought up, there were the guys who, the rare hunters that would go around a race to collect all those rares, and then there's sites that would sell those rares for real dollar, right? Well, right after a few years after Ultima Online launched, there's a South Korean game called Cartwriter, and we actually Raph actually talked to the developers of Cartwriter, and those guys said they were inspired to do their price. And Cartwriter is actually the first true example of a free-to-play game, and they were inspired to do their pricing scheme based on rares from Ultima Online. So sorry. Free-to-play exists because of us. So that's our postmortem. We wanted to leave about 30 minutes for you guys to just give us some questions, anything you'd like to ask.
Actually, they're not going to be serving lunch till 1, so you have a little bit more time for that.
Great! Get some water. That would be awesome.
Who won between you and Hulk Hogan?
I'm sorry?
Who won between you and Hulk Hogan? You didn't say.
There were 3 matches.
Oh, there were 3 matches.
Did you cheat?
I won, of course. And anybody who remembers differently is a liar. No comments?
Who was the guy in the intro of the movie? What was his name? And you know, he did the intro.
You mean the voice actor?
Yeah.
Was that
It wasn't Bill Johnson. It was the other guy. Who else did it was? I don't remember. I will find out for you. It wasn't Bill Johnson who did the Guardian. It was a different actor.
I've been wondering about that for 20 years.
It's on the tip of my tongue, but it wasn't Bill Johnson. It was not the Guardian. It was another actor who used for a bunch of other Ultima stuff.
Okay.
When the game was launched, how many people actually bought the game when it originally came out? I think 50,000?
So the original sales for the first 30 days, I think, was 150,000.
Wow.
Yeah. Because we got up to 110,000 unique logins within the first 30 days. So, which was that was a world record. So.
It's also just interesting to note that how quickly Japan caught up. And it actually turns out if you look at the subscriber numbers, I have no idea what they are today, but within the first 3 years anyway, Japan rose to often actually have more subscribers than the United States. And Europe would be a distant third. But I doubt that's still the same now, but in the US or Europe or Japan. Oh, so it's still healthy there. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, by the way, I forgot about this. So a couple links. So if you want to learn more about exactly how the rares happened, Raph Koster on his website has a great little article about that. And also there's a version of this post-mortem that we gave at GDC Online, 2 years ago. There's an earlier version of this. That was me and Raph Koster and Rich Vogel. So it was a version of this. And me and Richard and Raph Koster are going to give a version of this postmortem at GDC. So we're going to do a 20th anniversary postmortem at GDC in March. So, yeah. All right, more questions? Yes.
So the escorts that are in game now can happen. Are they like a leftover from the oldest profession days?
I can only assume. I haven't checked in to see if they're the same But
Is one of them called Fly Guy?
We still have Prostitute Alley in the game.
There are certain behaviors you just won't weed out of society.
yeah, I mean, it's still, yeah.
Well, being governor of Bungalow on Baja, I have to say that I would really like to find a way to rid the city of that problem.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, everyone needs an outlet. People have passions.
I guess.
Needs. Yes.
Yeah, there is a, speaking of escorts, there is a escort in the game now as part of a quest called Lisbeth the Flower Girl, and you have to take her to go live with her grandfather, I think it is. And then I get there, taking her to the grandfather, and the grandfather lives in Ilshan on that little farm between spirituality and sacrifice, and his only companion is a sheep.
That seems normal. Way in the back?
Hello. Thank you for coming, first of all. It's great to My question is, could you elaborate on the discussion the development team had over backpacks that were originally in the beta and why they were later eliminated from the game?
What aspect of them exactly?
Just the wearing of them and the use of them, where your avatars actually wore them in the game itself, and that was later removed.
That's a good question. I don't remember exactly the details of why we had to take them out. It was probably something to do with performance, though.
That's my guess too. It had to either be performance or what we thought would be the visuals of the backside being dominated by a backpack. But I'll bet it was performance. But yeah, what's interesting though about UO backpacks versus backpacks and other online games, even the ones we're working on now, is this constant debate that we have. In fact, I think we represent opposite sides of this issue, as we often do, about lists or visually organized backpacks. And so I'm a big enjoyer of nested, visually organized backpacks with free movement of objects. But I'm sort of an outlier, at least on our current team, where everybody else is looking for nice alphabetized lists where everything's together. And the problem with that is that those are very different technologies with very different ways you refine them and fine-tune them, and whether you can need nesting and what to do if you have nesting as another option. So backpack control, backpack management, I'm guessing it's still a problem for you guys too. It's a debate.
I actually remember now. It was a sorting issue with the wearables, with the other wearables, and so the time it was going to take to get them to sort with all of the other clothing you would wear, which was something we just didn't feel like we were going to have time to make on a little 2D character. So that was it. Yes.
When you log in these days, do you play the Hamster Classic?
What do you play? We'll follow you.
All right. Other questions? Yes.
So, for many years, I've been the governor or mayor of youth on Great Lakes, and I'm always wondering, there's a road that just ends, and then it picks up again on the other side of the bay, as if there could be a bridge there, but it's never been there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
No bridge, just ends.
I don't know this is a fact, but what I thought, but it might be because it's one of my strongest memories of childhood, kind of before that I often describe this story, which is I was on a Boy Scout camping trip one time when we went out after a big rainstorm, and the trail had been marked until it came up to what now is a lake, and the trail did pick up on the far side of that lake, but we had to go bushwhack and find our way around through the woods. And so that is often, I find little vignettes, like, I just wrote a book that's published recently called Explore, Create. It's how, my belief that to make good original content, you need to be a lifelong lifelong student of everything and draw your inspirations from everywhere. And when I was laying out the original maps of Britannia, those were the kinds of things that were in my mind, were all these moments in my own path tracking. That was really cool when we came across this obstruction. So I don't know that's a fact, but it's a kind of thing in my opinion.
I have so many questions.
Try one.
I'll start with one. Once you discovered the value in the game from real estate and rares and such, was there any discussion amongst your team or with Electronic Arts that were trying to say, well, maybe you should get on this, to fund future projects? And how did you decide not to do it because you didn't?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had those discussions for sure. At the time, well, the discussions ranged like this. So first was, should we try to fight it? Should we prohibit it? So should we say, hey, you can't trade those items, like don't sell them on eBay, blah, blah, blah. And we all firmly agreed, like, no, we don't want to do that. We're going to allow that to happen. That's fine. We actually think that's actually good publicity for us. Like, the fact that people assign real value to those things is, the fact that there's a virtual real estate market, we can use that for marketing and PR, and that's great. That's one of the values that we have. So that was a decision, and we arrived at that fairly quickly. And there actually wasn't, I mean, there was some debate.
Although we didn't officially endorse it.
No, we didn't. We just didn't fight it. Like we never said like, oh yeah, we'll support it or anything like that. Like we never said like we'll guarantee those trades or we'll like if you did that and they scammed you, we're not going to fix that for you, right? So we don't facilitate it, but we don't prohibit. We don't actively fight it. So that was the first discussion. The second discussion was, okay, if we're not going to fight it, do we want to get in on the action? And like, do we want to sell that stuff ourselves? And our decision at that point was, well, that's a very different pricing model, right? We are a subscription-based game, and as a we're already monetizing the user. We're already monetizing the players twice. We're monetizing them when they buy the game, and then we're monetizing them when they buy the subscription. If we were then to also add in another monetization moment for, monetizing those then further transactions, at that time we felt like that would be too much. Nowadays, maybe it would be more palatable, but at that time we felt like that would not be a good PR move for us. That the player base would not react positively to that. They would perceive us as being too greedy. And it would be something that you would need to start with, not add in later. Like we kind of felt like if we had started with that position, like saying, hey, we're gonna monetize those things at the very beginning, if we had started that way, but coming into it later, like sort of trying to grab onto something that people were already doing, felt weird.
And there was one other, I think, important piece of discussion back then too, which was when you're charging a subscription for entertainment, we're not telling you what that entertainment is, right? We're not guaranteeing you're high level or low level or have swords or don't have swords or had things stolen from you or did not have stolen things from you. We're just saying you can connect and have fun on this product. As soon as we started selling objects, we felt, then we were sort of responsible for the object we just sold you. So if we sell you a sword and there's a bug that destroys it, or a dupe that duplicates it, or somebody steals it, or you just got PK'd and somebody took it off your course, you would be angry not only against the person who stole it, but you might be justifiably angry with us. And And if it was a bug or a dupe, you could be legally, have legal issues with us. And we actually felt that we would rather for that pain be focused at the other people than us. Because again, nowadays, like on Strategy Avatar, we know we won't lose objects. If an object is lost, we know we can go back into the logs and recreate whatever lost it, we can return it to somebody. So we feel comfortable that things just won't disappear, randomly. But at that time, things were disappearing randomly. And so that would have been a really bad time to try to assure somebody, buy with confidence from us. We will sanction this trade. And we just felt that it was too dangerous.
Yep, approved.
Is that part of the reason why they stopped in the beginning, like you talked about Yule being a marketable thing? People were selling stuff on eBay and things like that. I don't think there was any gas as well. It's bugs. When the Visitors Resolution came out, there was something like 400 plus. Was that part of the reason they stopped all internal game sales to alleviate any animosity? So if, like, say, you sold something to me on eBay and I bought it, something happened, that person might go back to EA or Ultima and say, hey, I bought this, but now it's gone, what happened? Because there's no proof of purchase or anything. Who's being responsible? Or you might lose a game player and that player goes, there might be others to follow. I guess to eliminate animosity in the game.
I don't understand your question. Internal game sales, what do you mean?
Is that part of the reason why they stopped allowing people to sell stuff?
That was after our.
Yeah, I don't think we stop people from selling on eBay.
No, we just don't support it. No.
Yeah,
We just ignore it.
In-game.
We actually, back when we were around, we would advise people against it. We wouldn't say it's banned, we'll ban you if you do it. We would say, hey, that's a pretty dangerous thing to do, we don't advise it.
And we never allowed advertising in the game.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing. Like we always maintain a very strict, like you can talk about it outside the game, but the game is like real world discussions have to stay outside the game. That was always for the game. All right. Other question. Good.
As you guys designed the game originally, you got the rocket in the face for, hey, this could be Ultima online version of playing Ultima together. Obviously, were you primarily focused on like the mechanics of getting that, and you described that very well, versus the role playing that people started to do as they started to interact with the community? There were online weddings, in-game weddings, there were ceremonies. People were playing roles as fishermen, of course. What's been your observation, experience, or the aha kind of moments that you may have had with the role playing or the way people interact?
Well, I would say, one of the great things I think that Raph Koster did on this project, and maybe I should give more credit to you on this too, I don't know where the line between you sits in this case, was to really sit down and think about how to make sure that we had roles in the game that truly were interdependent, and where no one would become the super tank crafter mage and not need someone else. And so we planned those loops. Those loops were thoroughly considered. I mean, they may not have been perfect by any much stretch, but they at least were considered to make sure that, that if you're going to be the blacksmith, you're going to need ore and material from the mines. And if you don't want to go get it yourself, you're going to go have to buy it from a miner. And the guy that thinks he's a miner is going to need to go there and back heavily laden with ore, and they probably won't also be able to defend them, so they're a high-value target that won't be good at defending themselves. They'll need to hire some armed escorts, and those armed escorts will need lots of gear and equipment that will also want to make sure wears out, so they have to buy new gear and equipment, and where are they going to get repaired or buy new gear? Back from that blacksmith. And so we would sit and think about how many of these loops, interconnections can we make to drive this sort of behavior. And that's the part that's sort of game function related. And I'm going to tell the fisherman story that I know you know. The thing that least surprised me was the emergent behavior that did not have to do with that loop. That there were people very immediately began to role play purely for the sake of role playing that had nothing to do with the kind of economic or mid-leveling kind of needs to do anything better. It was just because they enjoyed this particular aspect of role playing. And so for me, that day came another one of these days that I was in the help queue, kind of wandering around, usually invisible, just kind of watching how this reality is unfolding. And I walked out along a riverbank this one time, and there was a guy out here fishing. And you know, the simulation for fishing on launch was incredibly simple. It was literally 50-50 chance, catch a fish. That's it. There was no more or less to the simulation. And so I did not think fishing would be popular. And yet fishing became one of the most popular skills, I think, right from the very beginning, even with that incredibly simple simulation. And so I was here watching this fisherman, invisibly, on the banks, and he was, well, he had a nice cool straw hat, and he had this raggy shirt and little short pants, and he looked the part, really great. I mean, I didn't even conceive that we had made clothing to let you look like a fisherman, but he pulled it off. And as he's catching a fish, every 50-50 chance he catches a fish, he would set the fish down along him on the bank of the river, which of course also means somebody can come by and steal them, which is what I'm thinking. And so we're like, what an idiot, he's putting these fish out of the ground. But it actually looks nice. It's kind of adding to his little ambiance of him sitting here by the riverbank fishing all by himself. And while I'm sitting here watching him, this heavily laden fighter comes by. You know, in my mind's eye, he's clanking in plate mail. He sees, clank, 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 comes into view, pauses in front of the fisherman, and then says something like the following. He says, "Oh, I see you are but a poor fisherman struggling to stay alive. Says, I am a great fighter, and I'm just returning from the dungeons where I've pillaged and plundered, and I bring back much wealth and equipment. So let me give some of my bounty unto you." And he lays that on the ground, a nice helm, and a nice breastplate, and a nice sword, and all this kind of stuff. And the fisherman stands there and says, "Stop, stop, 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 stop! What are you doing, you ruffian? Be gone! What need do I have of your implements of war?" He said, "I am a fisherman. In the morning, I come out here by the riverbanks and watch the sunrise and catch my fish and enjoy the beautiful outdoors. In the afternoon, I go back to town and I set up a stand and I sell the fish."
Theory about the player types. And so if you're not familiar, there was Richard Bartle, basically invented multi-user dungeons, which are the graphical ancestor of MMOs. And so the four player types are explorers, achievers, role players, and killers. And basically Richard Bartle's theory is, after observing people playing MUDs, from the very first one onwards, and then online games since then, is that everyone falls somewhere in that spectrum. Not everyone, very few people are purely one of those things, but everyone falls somewhere in that spectrum. You're either an explorer, so an explorer is the kind of person who wants to find every nook and cranny, turn over every rock, go to the deepest dungeon, find go to the top of the mountain, find every little space there is to find in the game. The achiever wants to get to the highest level, have the max skills. That's the min-maxer. The role player is the fisherman. That's the person who wants to have the wedding, who wants to decorate their house, that wants to dance in the tavern, that wants to tell stories. He's the bard who writes books, who basically, and the killer is the one who wants to disrupt all of that, right? Who wants to just murder, and he's the guy who puts that teleport gate in the bank and has the pilot horses. But the important thing about that theory is they all need each other, right? You can't make a game that purely satisfies all of them. And what we mean by that is that the role players need the achievers and explorers, because the role players need to be able to tell stories about what those guys have done. And even the killers, they need to be able to tell stories about, oh my God, like the bard, who's one of the role players, needs to be able to write a song about, have you heard about the horrible murders that happened outside of town yesterday? That they need something to talk about. The achievers need, they need to hear about something the explorers found so they can reach that level, like, oh my God, there's a deeper part of the dungeon that I didn't get to, well, I have to achieve that. And so there's an ecosystem that you need that all four of those player types interact with each other. And again, not everyone is a pure one of any of those. And so we consciously built UO to support those four player types and the interdependencies between them. And again, it's not perfect, but it was very intentionally designed to support all of them. I mean, the housing system was built to support roleplay, right? The things like fishing and crafting were built to support the intersection of roleplay and achievement to help the achievers, so that you could build stuff to help people achieve, and indirectly to help the killers kill people by giving them gear to kill people.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the PKers, or I often use the term dissidents, these people they get their joy out of the disruption. And what's interesting about them, about this group, is that if you purely just try to stop them, that is what gives them pleasure, like a troll. Don't feed the trolls. That's what gives them pleasure. And so if you try to do things like ban them, they'll just create new alts, and they will find the fact that you took the time to ban them means you were paying attention to them, and so they're extra motivated to come back in and find another way. And so, it makes me think of, how like in some towns that have big graffiti problems, they will go to a park and put up a big wall specifically for people to put graffiti on. As they're saying here, don't put it on the nice downtown building, please put it here where, it's not quite as disruptive. And of course the challenge with those is that since they're really trying to do it to be disruptive, you have to figure out a way to seduce them to doing it in a place that's not so disruptive. So we work very hard then and now to not try to ban these people, but to find a way to give them outlets that don't disrupt the things that are important. And so that's why, for example, if people are going to roleplay a wedding, it needs to be in a safe zone. It's just not cool. It's not acceptable for a PKer to run through and disrupt a wedding, because by the way, they would do it to every wedding, and therefore you really couldn't have weddings. On the other hand, you really want to make sure that there are places that even the role players, even Winfield and I, are enticed to be willing to expose ourselves to serious risk, because that's actually not only what the PKers are looking for, but I think it's good for the role players too. And it's an argument we have all the time where we have literally audience members now, and you probably still do here, where they're going, I really was not interested in facing anything that's PvP. I won't go there. If you tell me across this line there's danger, I'm not going. And if you make the game where it requires me to go across that area, I'm going to abandon you, and I'm not going to be a subscriber. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that, but I don't believe it. And the reason why is it goes back to the stories we tell. And even those people, the stories they all tell are these stories of why they hate it. But in my mind, the right way to solve that is to let them have their safe haven, but then find ways to entice them to consider the danger. And even if they never cross over to the danger, the fact that they know that's where the danger is, and the fact that they know there's the golden ring in there somewhere, will mean they think about it. And that level of at least mental, if not actual engagement with the danger, I think is important for both sides.
What you just mentioned, is that where you came up with the idea to double the resources in Bell?
Yeah, I mean, that's putting more resources in areas that have higher risk is a classic way to do it. And I know you had your hand up for a while.
Well, I just wanted to thank all of you and the team for creating such a wonderful world that I can walk out to any area and I can hear a dog bark, chickens, a panther that shows up, even a troll that is wandering into the town. It is a marvelous world that we have all been enjoying, and it took a lot of thought to connect all of these things, even to go out in our ships to pillage and burn, and to see a dolphin go by our ship. And it looks like a dolphin, it sounds like a dolphin, and I just want to thank you for this wonderful world that we've all been privileged to enjoy. And around this table, I have great friends that are lifelong friends that I've met and have played with for years in this game, and I celebrate you. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to also, I want to thank the Broadsword team for keeping it alive. While we birthed it, you know, we haven't been around it for a very, very long time. So
most of the
yes, we get a lot of credit for starting it, but that was just a tiny bit of work, right? The real heavy lifting has been keeping it alive for the, you know, again, I was only part of it for the first 4.5 years, right? So, and it's been around 20 years, right? So Bonnie's been working on it longer than I have. Yeah, so way longer than I have. So, I mean, thank you. But again, there's people who have done way more work on it than I have. So, but thank you.
Yeah, and on that same vein, something else is to go back to all of you. You know, we are only here. We only exist. The product only exists because you all chose to adopt it. And I know that sounds trite in the sense of course, no movie is thought of as a good movie unless people watch other books, etc. But this is different. This is a community where we learned early on to have an incredible appreciation for the fact that we set up a physical space and some interactive rules of structure, but the community, this survives because the bonds between the people that you're just talking about, the friends you have that you've had for decades around the table. It's the fellowship in this room that transcends the game. I mean, think about it. You all know very well, you've had plenty of opportunities over the last 20 years to find a game with better graphics. You've had plenty of opportunities.
Literally any game.
You've had plenty of opportunity to, join games that have bigger communities. I would argue, haven't had the opportunity necessarily to go one of the richer set of features. I think we actually did a pretty darn good job of that. But the whole reason that it's really survived, it really has to do with y'all. I mean, it literally is your bonds to each other, your bonds to Bonnie and the rest of the Broadsword folks. That bond that even after 20 years invites us to be here, that is why this exists. So, I would offer it straight back and salute all of you as well.
I want to say one thing before you go on. I was told by Star that Richard said if I didn't invite him, he was going to crash it anyway.
That's true. I would.
After 20 years, are there any Easter eggs that you guys put in the game that are still not
Not that I know of, not that I can think of.
But there's reasonable odds there are. Because, at least back at Origin, this is probably true of every developer, but I know for a fact at Origin, every developer took sinister glee in hiding things that they literally never told anyone else about. And sometimes we, the company, or the bosses of the company, would discover some of these, and sometimes, usually they were humorous, and sometimes we were not happy. And so we'd occasionally pull some out that were like people leaving themselves big stashes of how to win the game, or things that we thought could be exploited post-launch once the rumor got out or the word got out. But there's got to be plenty buried in there that would be at least difficult to find.
I know you guys are pretty smart. You find most everything.
So once upon a time, this has been taken out of the game. But once upon a time, when you killed someone, you were able to cut off their body. Lord jerky.
Yeah, or pop.
Who's responsible for that grisly thing? And I was just kind of curious.
That was me and Raph. And what's funny is we ended up having to take that out because of basically the rest of the world. We literally could not sell the game in other parts of the world because of turns out that they frown upon cannibalism. jerky and pies and that sort of stuff. And this guy keeps wanting me to do that in what we're doing now, and I keep fighting him against it.
You know, it is really funny. You know, throughout our careers together, you know, Lord British is the paragon of virtue, and is here to tell people to walk the path of virtue. And Blackthorn has always been the Lord of Chaos, and is here for free will and chart your own path, and not necessarily specifically evil, but you know, living up to somebody else's ideals is not necessarily the right way to live. And so those are sort of our public personas, right, with our characters. But at the office, when we're debating, discussing features like that, we are exactly the opposite. And so I'm always the one that's going like, this would be a really cool and clever way to have children be killed. And as far as like going like, you can't put that in the game. Put it in the game. Or cannibalism, or you name it. So if it is provocative and on the borderline of offending some constituency,
or get us banned outright in a country.
I'm usually the one promoting it, and usually the one trying to rescue it.
Alright, so UO Renaissance, Trammel Fell, continues to be one of the most polarizing topics, I think.
Sure.
For me, when it came out, I was kind of disappointed that it was an exact replica of Fell. What went into that thought process of both, you guys have already touched on it, but managing all the player types and also releasing, substantially increasing the game by 2, doubling it, and having that same kind of set? Like, were there different, did you guys have different thoughts on going?
Well, so full disclosure, that was after both of us were long gone. So anything I'm going to say is like,
speculative.
Telephone.
Let me tell you the short story.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's cheap.
So
And you got more land.
right. So first of all, again, even with the success of UO, it was never given the economic resource of other projects in Electronic Arts. They looked at other properties as more lucrative as far as because at that time, it was competing with other, online versions like Sims Online, for instance, was being developed at the same time, so they were competing with them for money. So you can imagine which franchise was getting more attention, right? So they needed a quick way to generate a lot of land mass. That's really it. And as far as the logic of generating, having, basically a lot of safe space, that was, again, the biggest customer limiting factor was land that was not safe. And as we saw with literally every MMO after UO, safe spaces sell more product. And again, the subscriber numbers for UO back that up. As soon as that launched, we had the highest subscriber numbers for UO ever, double those subscriber numbers prior. So, I know it was controversial, and I know people look at it as like, it was like, it was ruined. And I'm like, well, not from an economic standpoint.
And by the way, don't forget, there were a lot of things you're doing in real time versus what you might do if you had, the crystal ball to see in the future in the first place. I find shards to be awkward. Much less this Tremel and Felucas play. And so, fictionally, we would have approached all of that differently had we had the ability to plan for what was going to happen, before we started. You roll with the punches and make the best call you can.
Yes.
Two quick questions following up on what you were talking about before. First, I'm wondering the backstory on taking out the kid NPCs and villains. And the other, I'm just wondering, given how you balanced all the skills to be interdependent, what was the thinking behind allowing 5 and then 6 and 7 character slots on each shard?
So answer the first one. So the removal of the child NPCs was just a concern about pedophilia roleplay. To be perfectly honest.
Killing children.
And killing children, but it was really more.
Actually, that was not. That wasn't okay.
That was actually not the primary concern. The primary concern was not about the killing of it. It was more about the pedophilia role play. To be perfectly honest, because it literally only took one observed incident of that for us to go, oh, holy shit. People are that fucked up. We need to take that out immediately. So, and this is why we can't have nice things. And as far as the multiple character slots, again, that was just a lot of requests from the community, about the players of wanting to have, being able to play different players types.
And it can take you on to 7 slots.
Yeah, and it just, people just wanted more. People like more.
But it is interesting. But if you look at the other extreme, it was at 1. That's my fault. So I'm sort of the counter person on this one, where going back really to Ultima 4, where the word avatar got introduced to the lexicon that we now use in games. How I feel about slots to this day, in games we make now, is that, to me, if you're going to have quests or activities that describe or broach a subject like morality or ethics, it's important that the character you are playing is not someone else. It's not your evil sidekick wizard you're playing today. It's you, the Earth human, who, though you may have gone through the moon gate and now be a tough dude, it is still your soul, your spirit, your mind that is responsible for the actions of that character. And so therefore, if you are killing children or doing whatever else moral or otherwise that you're doing, it was important to me that it reflected upon you, literally this person. And I have this problem with the anonymity of the internet, letting people operate in their most base ways. And so I enjoy having a one-to-one tie. You, this one Earth human, has one virtual existence. Make the best of it. And if you are a mean-spirited, horrible person, people will learn that, and they will not want to hang around with you anymore. And having multiple character slots kind of runs opposite of that. But how at least why I've kind of given in on the subject, goes back to another, I would argue, mistake that I also made in a number of Ultimas, including the foundation of Ultima Online, which was being human. Early on, if you remember when, for those of you who remember the earliest Ultimas, Ultimas 1, 2, and 3 were plagiarized from every other book, movie, D&D, Star Wars, Time Bandits, that was inspiring me at the time. I mean, literally things from all this other intellectual property was in the game. And then starting with Ultima 4, I said, that's probably not the best way to make a game. I ought to really have my own world with its own logic. And that immediately meant that all the classic tropes that weren't mythological disappeared. And so anything that was specifically J.R.R. Tolkien's, I removed from the game. Anything that was specifically from another game or books we also had to remove. I was happy to leave in some of the things that were truly mythologies that were broadly available, but even some of them I didn't bring in until I thought of a rationale as to why I believe it should be part of this world. But what I wasn't thinking about was what you all thought should be the world. I was in some way being egocentric in that way to go, if I didn't think that elves I didn't have a logic for why I wanted to bring elves in yet. I didn't. But it had nothing to do with whether you guys had already been role-playing as an elf, and you liked being role-playing as an elf. And so I, in the earliest days, would ban, we're humans, and I would write stories even about the bigotries between humans and non-humans. And so to me, it was logical to leave those things separated out. But again, I was not respecting what you all might already have as a lifelong role-playing pursuit as a different species. And so that kind of then said, well, if I'm going to let you be a human and be an elf, or whatever else we might do, you might need another slot. But at least in my mind's eye, those other slots are still you, not your alter ego. I don't know what Chad's name is these days, but at least in when I give it on multiple slots, I struggle with how to make sure that you can't log in as your nice person, log out and log back in as your evil person to set somebody up. And then the good person gets none of the bad karma. That's avoiding karmic responses to your behavior is at least something I personally am against.
Yeah, right there.
Was there any notable content you discussed or possibly even designed that didn't make it into the game, whether it's a skill, race, stat, city, monster, or dungeon? Also, how did you come up with the languages of the monsters? Because like some of them are great. Right? Oh,
That's a lot. That's a lot. Well, there's a bunch of things that like got partially implemented, although a lot of them over time have gotten added to the game, right? So, like originally, so first of all, a lot of systems share tech. So, for instance, boats and houses are the same tech. And so, which led to some funny bugs during the beta, where you could drive your house around. But boats were originally, so you were supposed to originally have like cannons and have ship-to-ship combat when we launched, but we ended up having to cut that. But I think that later got added, right? So that was a big one that we had to let go of. There were other parts that we didn't develop as much as we wanted, like the maze was supposed to be a lot bigger and more elaborate and have all sorts of extra stuff in it, like traps and other monsters. So that was supposed to be bigger and more elaborate. So that had to be scaled back a little bit. There were supposed to be at least 2 more dungeons when we launched that we didn't launch with, although more dungeons have gotten added over time.
And the biggest one we added and had to pull out, we already talked about, which was the virtual ecology.
Yeah.
And at least for me, that was one of my personal favorites. I didn't work on it, but I mean, I so much enjoyed showing it off to people and watching it operate and thinking that this was just such a watershed moment in game design, which no one ever noticed or cared about. And I gotta say, I can tell the side story now because it's no longer a target, but when one of the EverQuest reboots was coming out, they had this big list of their features, and one of their features was virtual ecology, where grass grows, you feed herbivores, you feed carnivores. I was like, no, there's dragons there, don't go.
Don't do that. And then as far as like the creature languages, well, like when we launched, the only one we had done, I think, was the orcs. And all the rest were after my time. And a fun story about the orcs were the guys who would role play as orcs. So we had the orc mass, and then they would go clear out the orc fort, and then they would role play as orcs. They were my favorite, one of my favorite groups. And as far as that, developing that language, we had a programmer on our team, this guy Herman Miller, who was really obsessed with bird calls. And so, in fact, he had this MIDI keyboard that he had filled with bird calls and would like songs that were just bird. But he was also obsessed with language, and so he and Raph worked together on making the orc language feel real.
And Herman and I had actually worked on Ultima 6 to make the gargoyle language be worked out also. So, and I've always been a big believer that, in my best version of how we approach game design and how our games ultimately are delivered, I would often describe that as that we are the Tolkien-style developers. And what I would mean by that is that if you're going to create a powerful narrative, it needs to be on top of a very deep understanding of the world in which it is set. And after I read Lord of the Rings and came to this realization that he must have done that, and I went and consumed all of his back materials for his unpublished and unfinished works. I then went back and also read the Kalevala, the oral history of the Finnish Laplanders. And interestingly, I'm taking my Christmas vacation to literally go into that region to go record some of that oral tradition myself. So it's still a deep inspiration to me. And we've tried to keep that. And so language and culture of those races is a big part of what I think gives reality, is a well of reality to the world we're driving.
We've got time for one more question before we break for lunch.
In the back, the green shirt.
I was just curious if you still log in today, and if so, what takeaways do you have from the current state of the game? What amazes you? What surprises you? Is there any one particular thing that you say, wow, I really wish we had that 20 years ago when we launched?
Well, I haven't been on in some years, but by the way, I will join anytime the community and Bonnie wants me to. So we periodically have. I don't play actively on my own, but at least I would be very happy to come and join role-playing events, if that would be desired. It just needs to be planned and scheduled. It's interesting. Every time I've gone back in, you may see, but we're only in for short stays, or at least I'm only in for short stays. So I would probably miss some of the deeper connections of how the skill trees and leveling and all that stuff is done. The things I noticed are the surface UI stuff. We didn't used to be able to drag a window off the main screen, and even that, which was probably now 10 years ago, I'm guessing. But to me that was a huge revelation. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not having to peek underneath windows to find everything. And so for me, it's always those kind of very surface UI things that the niceties of the future that I notice.
What he said. Just to conclude, thank you guys for playing the game. Thanks for forming an amazing community. I mean, the reason I make games like this is to create social experiences, and the fact that you guys have formed bonds together that have lasted this long is amazing. And again, if I go back and meet myself 20 years ago and tell them, by the way, you're going to be standing here 20 years later and your game's still going to be alive, I would not believe me. And thank you, and thank you, Broadsword, for having us here today. And thank you for giving.